he was lighting a scene where a guy's taking a shower. You've got to backlight the water or else it won't show up on frame.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, what? You can't be serious. Nope, he's absolutely right. You won't see the water droplets unless they're backlit.
Oh.
If you're watching this episode, you may have noticed we remembered to take the lens cap off.
Which is step number 2 in making sure that you capture usable footage.
Well, step number 1.
Turn on the camera.
Nice. Welcome to Indie Film Podcast. I'm Victoria.
And I'm Chuck. We're breaking down the 7 deadly sins of low-budget indie filmmaking. So far, we've covered scripting, rehearsals, and art department.
So today, we're going to cover the thing that makes or breaks it all, lighting and shot design.
More specifically, how to make sure your film doesn't look like security camera footage.
Yeah, because no matter how high def those Ring cameras get, I just don't think they're ever going to play as Cinematography.
Unless you're making something within the 28 Days Later franchise. Nice. Just kidding. All right, Victoria, can you tell us a lesson that you learned behind the camera that you wish you would have learned earlier?
Yeah, there's this really super simple trick for composition that once you learn it, you feel kind of ridiculous for not putting that together earlier. And I started with it for photos, but I've since moved on to using it for film footage.
Right on. I love that. It's good to get out and take pictures. With the camera, use your phone. Make sure that you're getting those reps in.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's fun. It teaches you how to like build some lines and some patterns and what compositions and styles you like. So
yeah. And what was this super simple trick that you learned?
The example is a little bit more informative than the rule itself. The rule itself is make sure that if you're filming or photographing something interesting, that interesting thing is actually in the frame.
Okay, that's good step number 1.
And when you hear that, you're like, yeah, duh, of course. But the idea is if you're taking a walk through the woods and you're like, wow, these trees are so pretty. There's this gorgeous clearing. I'm going to take a photo. And you take a photo. You might notice, actually, those are pretty average-looking trees. It's not the trees that were pretty.
Yeah.
It was the light coming through the trees. So just stop and ask yourself, what does make this pretty? What does make this interesting? Why do I feel compelled to take this photo right now? And make sure that you get that centered in a line to be either your eyes drawn to it through different lines, or it's center in the frame, or you're using the rule of thirds, and all the fun things we'll cover later on in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really simple.
It is.
And it's pay attention and be curious.
Yeah.
And it's fun to watch other people that you know take out their phone and get pictures and videos, the people that haven't ever worked behind a camera at all. They have zero skills. And it's really fun to see how they approach taking a picture. And it's kind of one of those things where if you take enough pictures, you will get some really cool ones.
Yeah.
Just by accident.
Yeah.
But the percentage of good pictures versus pictures that are completely unusable or don't just bring out any emotion in the viewer is a lot lower for those people that haven't gotten the reps in.
But the more reps you do, the more that ratio can shift in your favor.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's very important to note that. This is a very practicable skill. You can get better.
Yeah. Do you have any personal stories you want to share about things that you've learned?
I think my favorite things that I've done behind a camera have not always been the successful things.
Okay. Right on.
But they've been the moments where I was willing to try and take a risk.
Okay.
There's this one really wild tracking shot in a short film I made called Didn't. And it's a man checking out at a grocery store and sort of the drama that ensues between them, and then a police officer enters.
Yeah.
And so we start with, a shot of the cashier ringing things up, and then it tracks down to the cash being handed, or it was a check being handed over, and then the nervous look on the guy's face who handed the check as we're spinning around the both of them, and then we see the reaction on the cashier's face, and we're trying to rack focus all of this until we go all the way around the entire set, so you see everything in the entire room, and then you're watching the police officer enter. And then the dramatic moment of, is this a bad check that you're passing? And because that was the whole point. Anyway, so it's a pivotal moment in the film.
A lot of movements.
Yes. A lot of movements with just, the single bass handle on the DJI Ronin and the relying heavily on the autofocus on my Canon.
Yeah. Okay.
And it wasn't perfectly executed. Oh. It was not at all, not even slightly. And we had several takes.
Okay.
But it was a lot of fun, and it was really exciting to try, and it was so cool that even though there were only a handful of lines, being able to catch all the faces of these people and the actual action and realizing this is the exact visual storytelling method was just so cool and so much fun. It doesn't look great, but the idea was fantastic, though.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a good one.
Execution was 100%.
Well, I mean,
that's okay.
You gotta miss them.
You do.
And I actually had a podcast that I did for years. I had to look up when it started, and it was 2018. And that was the first time I really did any of my own camera work.
On the podcast that you were making?
On the podcast, yes. This old podcast. It was like a local Boise thing where I would talk with local artists here. And I thought, okay, I should put it on the YouTube channel where my brother and I were making short films.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, I need to have video with that. So I did my best with the 2 cameras that I had access to, and the difference in skin tones between the 2 guests, because first I did a split screen and then I did a wide shot. I wasn't quite sure how to white balance it correctly because I just didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I did like 115 episodes.
That's not nothing. That's a lot. That's more episodes than we have of this podcast.
Yeah, and it barely got better over time. Right. And so but the thing was I wasn't concentrating on that.
No, your focus was on the podcast content. Yeah.
Okay. So like my own greatest personal success would probably be working at a tech company and filming components of electronics because it was just sheer volume.
Well, and the actors are always going to show up on time.
True. Yes. And they don't complain. And they don't need crafty breaks or bathroom breaks or anything.
They just sit there.
You're just 100% in charge of those computers and those printers and all those electronic components. So easy, and extremely fulfilling. Obviously, no, it's obviously I didn't continue with that job. I didn't even continue going down that path because it is very monotonous.
Yeah.
But at the same time, after a few years of that and having filmed so many different products, it was very quick. It became very quick for me to be able to check focus. Sometimes I had to move around to different departments. They had different cameras, learning, the Sony infrastructure versus the Canon infrastructure or menus, and then my own Lumix that I used. I was able to, kind of learn all 3 of them, being able to check focus, being able to get an eye for exposure really quickly.
Yeah.
Because when I sent stuff in initially, it was like, oh, this shot doesn't match the other shot. And having to go back and rework it, or have it even worse, having to go to the giant facility, grab a printer, spend 20 minutes walking across the facility to set it all back up in the studio again.
Yeah.
So it was brutal. You didn't want to go back in there.
This is the moment to get too much footage.
Yeah. Make sure that you overshoot it. Make sure that everything is absolutely perfect, because a large company, or any company in general that sells products, don't want those things to look bad in a video or on a photo.
No.
Because everything needs to be perfect.
Yes.
In those realms with social media. So it was a really good experience. For me, it wasn't fun at all.
It wasn't fulfilling work, perhaps.
But now when I'm not a cinematographer. When I'm on set, I am 90% doing sound work. But it was nice to be able to get that experience. So now if I do get into, my brother and I have done, and you and I have done some live music video shoots, I can hold my own behind the camera now, at least.
Yeah.
I know that if this is out of focus, I know when to trust the autofocus on my camera.
Yeah.
And the autofocus peaking.
Or the focus assist. Yeah.
Yeah, the focus assist. I know when it's accurate, when it's not quite accurate, when I need to adjust it manually to double check that and frame things up relatively quickly.
Which is good, because you got the reps in.
Yeah.
And now you get to use that to your advantage, which feels like a big win.
There was a quote I wanted to read here about that, too.
Oh, yeah.
Which is Bruce Lee's, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times."
That feels right.
if you're interested in getting out there and making films and hopefully getting some notoriety on that, you just gotta do it.
Just do it over and over again.
All the things you gotta get reps in. And I feel like camera is one of the most important.
I agree. I would say lighting and cameras both, though they tend to go hand in hand. But lighting and cameras both. Because as much as I can be excited about my progress over time in my overall composition.
Yeah.
I do also know there's still a lot left to be desired in my gaffing abilities.
Yes. Lighting contrast and framing go hand in hand.
They really do. They are an important team that works together. They are the peanut butter to your jelly. Unless you have a peanut allergy, then they're the almond or sunflower or whatever other butter you would prefer. To the jelly there.
I like it.
We had somebody with a peanut allergy on set recently, so now it's just in my brain all the time.
Yeah, you gotta watch out with those analogies too, in case they start to break out. I don't know how that works. So we kind of want to share some of our best lessons.
Yes.
That we've learned. And one is, for me, learn your camera.
And I put the caveat of, or a camera.
In and out. Menu systems. DSLRs. Actually, Blackmagic is the easiest for me. And I think it's probably the easiest for most people.
I would say between the Blackmagic I use and the Canon I use, the Blackmagic menu is so much faster and easier to navigate. Yes, you do have to go through a lot of screens.
Yeah.
But man, if you've been inside a Canon menu, there is just limitless options and it's dizzying.
And a lot of that is the hybrid photo / video
also very true.
Environment where it's like, well, I don't need focus stacking on a video because that doesn't do anything.
That will not happen.
That's what's this quick item menu. But if you're just getting started, or if you're a director that wants to learn some of the in and outs of how exposure works, how aperture works, those types of things, you can actually just download the Blackmagic camera app on Android and iOS. And it works really well. It basically makes your phone look like the screen on a Blackmagic. And you can automatically adjust, or excuse me, not automatically, but you can manually adjust the shutter angle, the white balance. And I don't know if it has, I don't think it has any focus peaking on there. It might depend on the camera, or false color, but that's another one to keep in mind.
Yeah, I didn't see either of those in there because I have used it before because I was just genuinely curious. And I got to be honest, the footage just does look better.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit more control over the specific frame rate and things.
Yes.
And I know that native phone cameras are getting better and better and better because, everyone uses them primarily as a really nice camera now. I guess occasionally maybe for a phone call too. But it's just to access your social media profiles.
I never answer my phone. How dare you call me?
Do not call me. What do you think this is? No. The Blackmagic app, because I just was curious and wanted to know, it does actually pull really cool, good footage, and it's really interesting to use. So highly recommend downloading that because it's free and you can just test it out and play with it.
Yeah, it's a great app.
Yeah.
The other thing that I learned, I've talked about before, but I want to remind people of W.I.F.F.L.E.
Yes.
If you're on set, I just keep that in my brain, especially if I have to do like a quick live shoot. And I get put on a camera that I haven't used for a while, which usually ends up being a Sony, which I spend a lot of time behind one. But when you're switching back and forth, like a lot of people shoot on Sony. And if I get a gig where I'm shooting on Sony, it's like, okay, I got to make sure I check these things. And W.I.F.F.L.E is just an acronym. It stands for white balance, ISO, f-stop, focus, framing, level, and exposure.
And those are all the things you want to make sure are set before you hit record.
Yes. Just in case. And sometimes you have to dig pretty deep in the menus on the cameras to make sure that you get all those check marked. And when I say level, I don't mean light level. I mean, just make sure your camera's level.
Yes. And yes, it's so great if your tripod has a level on it, but you never know what screw isn't tightened in quite all the way, or what's just not 100%, or if you're on a gimbal or something like that where it's got just maybe a little bit too much weight on one side. Yeah. Anyway, just always double check the level. Just
very careful on that one.
Yes.
Which we were watching West Wing recently, and it feels like every moving shot that I saw on that show, it was just slightly canted to the left.
There's a little bit of cant.
And it happened over multiple episodes, which makes me think, was this a decision? Because it's always tilted to the same side every time they move, or is it just like somebody had their thumb on the scale on the Steadicam unit?
Yeah, I think on the Steadicam unit, we just know if they're right-handed or left-handed now. That's what I think.
Just got a heavy thumb. Don't know how to control it. So, we were talking about some of the important lessons that we learned. One, learn the camera thoroughly, or a camera.
Yes.
For me, W.I.F.F.L.E acronym, don't hit record until you've checked all that stuff, which I didn't say lens cap off, which is actually a little bit more hard to do now with digital cameras. But make sure your camera's
Thankfully.
on.
But do make sure that it's on and everything.
Yeah,
you
turn the
know?
lens cap off, hit record. And then we also talk about be curious and play around with lighting especially, but framing and things like that.
Always try new things. Just get out there and see what makes you happy and expose yourself to as many different formats of film as you possibly can. So like TV, short form, long term form, I can almost speak today, dramas or comedies, like full-fledged movies, even animation, because I think animation is a really fun way to think about cinematography, because obviously it's not cinematography, I guess, unless it's stop motion, but it's not. They had to draw all of these things, so they drew these components into a specific way to build up this shot. So there's probably a reason they did that, and I think that's really fun and cool too. But that's just how you get to learn new things.
Yeah.
Try stuff out.
It is good. It is good to mess around with things like that. You just reminded me of another story that I heard. It was actually my brother's story because he went to school for writing, but he decided to take a film class, and that moved him. But it was a 101 class, and he moved away from that because he went into the class and there were a lot of kids that didn't understand that there were cuts in a film. Like they didn't even understand that multiple camera angles were happening while the film was playing.
Well, I guess that's why it's a 101 class.
Yeah. So just...
You know what? No, I'm going to say that the odds of that happening with a group of 18-year-olds in 2026, so much lower because everybody has CapCut on their phone now.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Everybody.
This was 05, so different.
Slightly
20
different
years
time
ago,
period.
Yeah, 20 years ago, it might have been a different story. But I think that's kind of funny. But
what an experience to be in that room where people don't know that's what's happening.
Yeah.
That's so cool to like have that light. I mean, maybe it shattered your reality of movies, so hopefully that wasn't too scarring.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that'd be like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of work.
That's finding out Santa isn't real.
Completely not aware of the fact that there is a camera, that the camera actually exists.
Yeah.
It's unique. But at the same time, I remember early on, I was not aware of how lighting worked.
Yeah.
Because we never messed with it. And bringing somebody on that was really capable with a camera and with the gaffing, it was just instantly, this is what we were missing in our films, which actually brings me to the cheap trick of the week.
Love it.
Negative fills.
Yeah.
That was such an eye-opening experience for me to learn about.
Yeah.
The fact that if you have black, does not reflect light. And if you don't have a bunch of money for a bunch of lights, a lot of times if you're filming in an already bright environment, just a lot of non-reflective surfaces can give you a dynamic lighting.
It can. And situation. I guess to be clear here, a negative fill.
Yes.
You mean as?
Just a big black piece of fabric.
There we go.
Yeah.
You can use just a big black piece of fabric or really navy blue, though keep in mind any color that is in there. Black is black because it's all of them all at once, or it's none of them, and then white is all of them. White is all of them.
White reflects everything.
Yeah, and then black will not.
Just absorbs it.
If it's blue, you might end up with a little bit of blue bounce back, or if it's a really dark green,
yes,
a little bit of green bounce back, which you can use creatively to your advantage.
Oh, for sure.
But just keep that in mind.
Yeah, just be careful.
Black is kind of nice.
Especially if you're shooting with a camera with a lot of like 16-bit color information, and then you get into post and you're looking at it and you're like, whoa, what is going on with that person's face?
Like, that's not right.
Oh, I guess this negative fill was slightly navy blue or something like that. Oopsie daisy.
Wasn't the pure black we'd hoped for. That's okay. That's okay.
So
but that's a good one.
Do you want to talk about, since you went to school for cinematography, do you want to talk about some of the things that the pros are going to tell you when you're just learning?
I would love to sit here and be like, I'm going to tell you what all the pros are going to tell you.
Yeah.
But it's really, if I'm saying this, it's because somebody who actually is told me.
Nice. So, we will take secondhand information.
We'll take it. I would say the first thing is composition.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of different methods to this. I know we covered them a little bit earlier. But like the idea of rule of thirds, frame within a frame, foreground, midground, background, leading lines, golden rectangle or triangle or spiral, because you can find many of those. Central composition versus negative space, an S curve. There are so many of these.
Yeah.
And you can hop on Instagram and find probably several 100,000 examples of all these different types of frames.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You easily can. But I think the most important thing is when you're looking at your frame, do you see a pattern?
Yeah.
Is there something there? Is there something drawing your eye towards where you want their eye to be?
Mhm.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Don't worry if you didn't get the golden triangle right. That's
Yeah.
okay. You made a pattern of sorts and you made it visually appealing. You either balanced the frame nicely or you left it unbalanced very intentionally,
Yeah.
and it achieves something. And light is a really good way to sort of add and take away from some of that, because if you think about sort of a busy, crowded room or a bar or something like that, and you've got the people at the front pretty well lit so you can see them, but you just see a big mass of black with an occasional moving shadow in the background.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I should throw a couple lights on there, maybe some practicals, have little lamps on the tables or a couple other like string lights hanging up above them, something that's going to illuminate them so you can see what's back there and it's not just an endless void.
Yeah.
And then boom, look at that. You've composited a shot by lighting your background, lighting your foreground, giving your midground a little bit of space and room to breathe. Look at you go. So
I like that.
That was my exciting composition rant.
Oh, right on. I liked it. No, I like the pattern aspect of things because I've gone back through and looked at some of the photos that I took that were interesting early on when I was taking a whole bunch of pictures and then compared it to some of those little charts that I've seen online or those composition rules online. And then it's like, oh, okay, this is what I'm tending to do
Yes.
when I'm taking a picture that I like.
Yeah.
Which ends up being, like an S-curve or a rule of thirds or whatever the case may be. But I found I was naturally doing some of those things, so it's easier to lean into that
Yeah.
in the composition.
Naturally, you're going to have your own personal preferences, and you may not be able to describe why you like something so much, but you're just very drawn to it. So lean into that. Welcome, you've just met your new style. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. I think that's perfect.
And even if something's really weird, I was just thinking about the movie Longlegs, for example, how the Nick Cage's character, who was the bad person,
The evil dude.
the evil guy, all you could see was basically the bottom of his chin.
You saw one of his lips.
Oh yeah,
too.
yeah. Part of his mouth, essentially like below the nose, was all they had in the frame for him.
Yeah.
And some of the frames were pretty large. And the funny thing is like in that film, obviously it was designed to be that way. But you and I have seen any films where all of a sudden they start cutting off like foreheads and eyeballs. And we're thinking, wait a second, this doesn't look like a decision. This looks like just, it might have been a lack of planning and the camera can't quite keep up with the actor's movement. And that feels a little bit different when it's unintentional versus like, we're not going to see Nick Cage's eyeballs for the first
half of this movie.
Yeah, he's just going to be this mysterious character.
Yeah.
That's completely out of frame.
And that works.
Or partially, yeah.
I think the most I often see the either referred to as way too much headroom or giving someone a haircut.
Yeah.
I think the most often I've seen that go real rough in the haircut, as in chopping off half their forehead realm, was when they were trying to auto stabilize a shot in post.
Oh yeah.
Using the warp stabilizer in Premiere.
And
it has to zoom in a little bit to keep your frame a little more steady, and you lose some things.
Oh,
like all your headroom or your lead room.
Yep. So make sure that you got something steady that you can get those shots on, and try not to fix it in post because it's not going to turn out how you wanted it.
No.
Your decision will be shaky shot or something with the actor's features removed. Oops.
It's not what you wanted.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I don't know. That's tough. And in that scenario, I might just go with shaky. Or just cut the shot completely and try to figure out what other coverage I had.
Yeah, at that point, I think I might take an artistic spin on like, I had this shot of the candle flickering on the table. Maybe we just hear the actors, but this is what we see.
Let's just make this a radio play.
Yeah,
this is
even
way too hard.
And as long as your sound was good, then you're fine.
Easy cheesy. So much simpler. What other pro tips you got for us?
Lighting contrast. So we've actually heard on a previous episode of this podcast where we forced our favorite cinematographer, who does not enjoy being on camera, to come here and be on camera. Danny Clamorous. He's a great cinematographer, and we've both used him and leveraged his work for a lot.
For sure. He's great.
He's talented.
And an excellent gaffer, too.
He is.
He does both things on set very quickly and efficiently.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
And he talked about light in a really unique way that I still am obsessed with.
Yeah.
It's that where adding depth.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, a movie is a 2D image.
Mm-hmm.
And you are using light to add 3D to it, or to make it look 3D.
Yeah.
And I really loved that.
Yeah.
Because I'd never really thought about a movie as being 2D before, but it is.
Yeah, and if you see something that looks uncinematic, it's usually because it looks two-dimensional.
Yeah.
It's not giving you that visual hallucination that this is.
That's right. A good cinematographer will make you hallucinate.
Yes.
That's what we're
hallucinate
after.
that extra dimension that doesn't even exist. I'm
Perfect.
just totally forgetting the word right now for what I'm looking for. That's okay. I'm just going to call it a hallucination. But yeah, it was fun watching. Danny was the one that initially helped my brother and I with a set of short films, and working with him, it was so eye-opening to see him use negative fills.
Yeah.
Correctly. It's like, well, there's too much light coming on this side of the person's face. Let's put up a big black sheet here or a big black board. And look at that. That looks way more interesting.
Now there's shadow on the side of their face.
We want the subject to pop in this environment, so we're going to put a hair light on them. And it was those little things that are really obvious. Didn't go to film school myself, so I probably should have understood some of that. But when you're just bombing around with a camera, pointing and recording at things, you don't understand what's going on if you're not curious and you're not looking at it.
Yeah.
So
I think that's all. I mean,
lighting is the thing. That is the thing that makes it look most cinematic.
it is.
All else being equal.
At the end of the day, it's gonna be your lights.
Yeah, and we made
your
fun
camera
of people.
matters a little.
We made fun of people, or made fun of the idea that LUTs are going to make your film look cinematic. It doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. A flat image with no contrast is a flat image with no contrast.
No, you're going to be doing a lot of post work to try to give you any depth whatsoever, and it's not going to end up looking the way you want it to. So
it's going to look like a video, a home video.
Well, the Cody Newton, a fantastic, not only fan of this podcast, but filmmaker as well.
Yeah.
Was the first gaffer I'd ever really gotten to work with on a shoot where I was cinematographer and he was gaffing and also running beat cam. So had a lot to do.
Indie film. We all do all the things.
We all do all the things. But it was just so eye-opening and wild to see how a gaffer works. Like, how do they set these lights up?
Yeah.
How do they know where to bring a little extra out? And he was lighting a scene where a guy's taking a shower, and so he was talking about, and I was like, yeah, well, we'll just keep the lights over here. And he's like, no, you've got to backlight the water, or else it won't show up on frame.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, what? You can't be serious. Nope, he's absolutely right. You won't see the water droplets unless they're backlit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought that was the coolest thing ever, because then suddenly it added so much depth to it, and it was really interesting and cool.
Oh, that's a good pro tip.
There we go.
Cody.
Yeah.
Backlight water from the shower.
Backlight your water whenever you can. It makes it pop out of your background a little bit more.
Nice.
So now we know.
What other pro tips you got for us?
Other pro tips: movement.
Nice.
Or intentionally choosing no movement.
Okay.
Conveying information visually, because that is the number one best thing about being a cinematographer, in my humble opinion.
Nice.
Is that you are the one who gets to tell the entire story.
Yeah.
I don't care if somebody else wrote it, if the actors are acting it, the director's got this vision. All that's fantastic. But the cinematographer literally decides what the audience is going to see. You're telling this story, so convey the story.
I like that a lot, and we could even go back to the script episode.
Oh, yeah.
With that, you know, maybe if you're a good cinematographer and you're looking at a script and it's a writer-director and you're working with a director and you're thinking, you know what, this line's a little clunky here. Maybe we could show what's going on rather than you have them explain it.
Yeah.
And it's going to make the movie so much better if you do that.
I feel like that would be a net win. And then you're also the hero that saved the movie. So
Yeah,
way to be the best cinematographer possible.
for sure.
And then, of course, everyone's heard of it. The 180-degree rule,
Oh, yes. Got to always keep that in mind.
which is the idea where you can't just hop back and forth on what's left frame, what's right frame. You want to draw a line across your scene or your set, and that is where the 180 degrees is, and you do not cross that once you've established that line. But one of my favorite things that a professor in film school did tell, at college where I was getting a degree, not a world-renowned film school, I should clarify here.
Okay.
The the rules are all there,
Mm-hmm.
but, if you have a reason, you should break them.
Yeah, that's super cool.
So, like the 180, we broke that real hard in Dive.
Oh, yeah, we did.
But it was only after we'd had quite a few shots establishing exactly what the location was and exactly where people were. It was still only 2 people, so it was a little bit easier for audiences to understand and not get as jarred or confused.
Yeah.
And it was at a very pivotal shift in the film.
It's pivotal.
It's
because
pivotal.
You were pivoting.
We were.
And the camera was pivotable at that juncture.
It was, indeed. Thank you. That's obviously what I was aiming for instead of just stuttering over my own words.
I liked it. I hallucinated the answer to that puzzle for you.
This is an exciting episode. This is going real well.
Easy cheesy.
Words are hard, man. How
this
do
is what we
writers
get
do
when we
this?
decide that we're not editing these podcasts. No editing.
No editing.
That's how
it.
we live. So yeah, I like that a lot. I kind of like the 180-degree rule. I do like when that is broken on films, but I feel like it was important for me to understand how it works
Yeah.
before I start breaking the rule.
Yeah.
It's like you got to learn how to play the instrument before you just dive into like whatever you think is good, because it's
Yeah, it helps to learn the saxophone before you hop right into a jazz riff where you're going to be
Yeah.
improving a lot.
yeah, it's like you don't need to know what the notes are. It's jazz. Well, it helps.
Sometimes it's actually okay to know what they are.
Do you want to talk about the films that they talked about most while you were in film school?
Yeah, and I won't take too long with it because, I mean, the best way to learn from these films is to watch these films.
Yeah, good call. Good
So,
call.
first up, I think everyone would pretty much agree with this. Citizen Kane, 1941.
What's that movie? Just kidding.
I think most people have heard of it, even if they don't know it. And Orson Welles was 25 when he co-wrote, directed, starred in, produced everything, right, for this film. So obviously, if you're over 25 and you haven't done all of that for a world-renowned film.
Yeah. What are you doing? What am I doing? No.
Just, anyway.
It's okay. Just wait till you're 40 and then start a podcast. Everything is going to be all right for you.
Everything will go
If
so
podcast
smoothly.
is even a thing by then. So just start one now so it's established by the time you're
There you
40
go.
and cantankerous.
You need the longevity on
Yeah.
it.
No, Citizen Kane, great movie.
Citizen Kane is really, really solid. Pay attention if you're going to watch it and you want to take things from it. The things that I'm most cited about it are the chiaroscuro lighting, which is the classic noir style lighting, multiple focal planes, which wasn't really used much until that point, allowing things in the foreground and background both to be in focus at the same time. Very unique low angle shots that emphasized power dynamics, and obviously the big changes in lighting that led to that very dramatic noir look.
Yeah.
So,
And he was a radio guy.
Orson Welles.
Yeah, he was a radio guy. He was radio first and took a crash course in camera work. And he didn't know that he wasn't supposed to do all the things that he was doing when he made the movie.
He didn't know he wasn't supposed to have the camera that low to the ground. He's like,
Yeah.
well, I need to see this.
Yeah, he just kind of approached it because he came from radio and he didn't know what he was doing. This is what I need. This needs to be cross-checked. I'm just totally riffing here based on something that I
come
said.
After
So
you hard.
yeah, double check. Maybe I'll listen to myself back on this and I'll double check and put a link in the comments to anything I can find there. But it's curiosity is really important.
But to be fair, Greg Toland is the cinematographer on it.
There we go.
Just so we know.
Okay,
Let's also give some credit there.
sweet.
Okay, Seven Samurai, 1954. Akira Kurosawa and Azakazu Nakai for cinematography. And
That's the original Get the Gang Together movie.
well, it's telling like the whole story of like the idea of, samurai, a day in the life of. So basically all those get ready with me videos on Instagram were just new iterations of this.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's what you're supposed to take from it. I'm gonna
perfect.
get raked over the coals for that comment. Anyway.
That's all you need to know. There it is.
The number one thing there is that he was one of the first to really implement multiple camera angles filming the same thing.
Okay.
So he was able to really originate that cut on action moment
Oh.
and then even get tighter and closer on certain actionable moments. So you got like zoomed in and this forced perspective to make the audience look exactly where you want them to, with it being the exact same shot. For the first time without having to restage everything, which was really cool and really interesting. He also has the idea of, is this the every frame? Yeah, every frame is a painting.
Oh, nice.
Which is which is important. Every frame, you should be paying attention to the composition.
Yeah, 24 a second. That's a lot of paintings in a movie, but that's okay. Just keep painting.
Just keep painting. It'll be fine. Okay, Psycho, 1960, classic for multiple reasons, but it was a lot of new point of view shots
Okay.
that had that voyeuristic feel to it. And, and the cinematographer, John L. Russell, also used a lot of dramatic lighting and high contrast, but used those shadows to intentionally obscure information, which you didn't really see a ton of.
Okay.
Previously, it was just for either a dramatic effect or because they don't know how to light something. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I don't think every movie prior to that's what was going on. But
Could have been.
Could have been. And then fun little fact that I did not even know before I read this and did verify it so that I'm not lying to people on the internet. The shower scene, the approximately 60-second shower scene where the death actually happens.
Oh, spoiler alert. Just kidding.
Well, that's in the very beginning of the movie. I don't know if that's giving it. Not very beginning, but early on, first third. Anyway, there are 78 camera setups for that one 60-ish second scene and 52 cuts.
Holy cow.
So if you want to talk about fast edits, there you go.
Nice. I wonder if that would make just a good vertical reel then. That's
Just cut it 52
Hitchcock
times.
was just so far ahead of his time.
He knew. We're going to tie all these back to Instagram. Just you wait.
Yeah.
Maybe a few of them for TikTok. Who knows? Okay. Barry Lyndon, 1975. Kubrick and John Alcott on cinematography. Lit the entire thing with candles, somewhat for intention, but also somewhat because they were filming in a lot of historic buildings and didn't want to damage it with really heavy lighting equipment.
Yeah.
But they ended up having to use NASA lenses, which is quote unquote NASA lenses because they aren't actually NASA lenses. They're just Zeiss lenses that NASA did use to take photos of the moon, which is super cool and interesting. Obviously, there are also a lot of things there. The entire cinematography and palette design and everything was based on the Rococo revival-ish artists, which is a whole artistic movement I won't go into right now, but is really cool. Think very pastel painting, like pastoral views and smooth S-curving lines and with a little bit of additional surrealism and political satire.
Yeah.
Because why not?
I remember that film. It has one shot where they're zooming out or was it zooming in? No, I can't remember. Damn it. But it was a extreme zoom and very slow. But as it's going on, it just keeps getting more and more interesting. And you're like, oh, this is an amazing shot.
It's really cool. They do fun things. You can do such weird, fun things if you're just not afraid to break the rules a little bit sometimes. Or just try something new. Don't even think of it as breaking the rules in case that makes you feel nervous. Blade Runner, 1982.
Nice.
Which is a very, very popular one. Again, that noir, neo-noir, chiaroscuro lighting, that kind of heavily contrasted style. But they were one of the first really well done, or I guess well executed methods of adding a bunch of environmental factors to add so much texture to your frames, like smoke and fog and rain and all these buzzing neon lights and all that stuff. It was really interesting the way they added composition to it, so totally worth checking out. And then No Country for Old Men, 2007. Coen Brothers and Roger Deakins. And I will say Roger Deakins is kind of the hero there because he also has 1917 and The Big Lebowski and Shawshank Redemption and a lot of other fun stuff. A lot of more modern stuff since then too, but really, really solid cinematographer who I admire quite a bit.
That's pretty modern for that to be covered in your class.
Well, you'll notice it stops at 2007 because... Well, I graduated film school. Not in 2007, but pretty darn close to 2007.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so
they probably might be updating that.
There's probably some new ones they might add now. They might add a few more Wes Anderson films in there, I suppose.
Yeah,
but,
super cool.
Yeah.
Well, right on. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to our featured filmmaker of the week?
I think so.
Awesome. Our featured filmmaker of the featured filmmakers of the week are Cody Esquivel and Alex Traster. And they actually sent us a voice memo, so I'm just going to play that for us. Awesome. It sounds like they're out there hustling.
14-year-old cinematographer. Step aside, Orson Welles.
Oh, yes.
Somebody even younger is coming. No,
And
that's awesome.
Yeah, if anyone's older than that, you should just feel bad about yourself for being behind.
Not at all.
Life is a race.
But that is really solidly impressive. One, at 14, to know you're that passionate about something already. And two, to actually be pursuing the skill sets to do it. So kudos to Alex.
Yeah, congrats.
And thank you so much, Cody, for sending that in.
Yeah, and if you want to submit to be our Filmmaker of the Week, go to indiefilmpodcast.com/submit. And if you've made it this far in the podcast, you really should subscribe, follow, whatever it says on whatever platform that you're ingesting this information on.
Whatever will potentially notify you in the future there's another episode that hopefully we can keep a little bit more concise.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited to share next week when we talk about some sound
concerns, which will be Chuck's time to shine, so you don't want to miss it.
I'm excited about it. All right. Well, shall we succinctly say farewell?
Sounds wonderful.
Bye.
Bye.